ओके, अब हम स्टार्ट करने लगे हैं वाई वर द फ्रेंच गवर्नमेंट्स अनस्टेबल फ्रॉम 90 से 95। ठीक है, तो अब हमारा ना फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन का जो मेन पार्ट था, ठीक है, कि क्यों हुई, कैसे हुई, ठीक है, वो हमने क्लियर किया। ठीक है, किस तरह? 5 मई को 5 मई को 1789 के अंदर आपके पास स्टेट जनरल की मीटिंग होती है। ठीक है, एंड उसके बाद आपके पास होता है कैशियर्स डी डोलियंसेस होता है। ठीक है, उसके बाद आपके पास होती है 17 जून को नेशनल असेंबली बन जाती है आपके, जो थर्ड स्टेट होती है। 20 जून को आपके पास होता है टेनिस कोर्ट ओथ। सही हो गया। उसके बाद आपके पास ग्रेट समर आ जाता है, लाइक समर आ जाता है। ग्रेट तो नहीं कहूँगा, ठीक है, लेकिन समर आ जाता है। सही, जो समर की ट्रबल्स वगैरह होती हैं वो कंप्लीट होता जाता है, तो आपके पास आ जाते हैं आगे अगस्त डिग्रीज आ जाती हैं, और 26 अगस्त की आपके पास आ जाती है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ द मैन एंड द सिटीजन। ठीक है, जैसे वो कंप्लीट होती हैं आपके पास आगे स्टार्ट हो जाता है एक नया, जैसे वो कंप्लीट होती है आपके पास अक्टूबर की जो होती है, क्या कहते हैं उसे, वोमेन मार्च स्टार्ट हो जाती है। ठीक है, तो यहाँ तक हमने ब्रेक लगाई थी। सही है, बाकी हम बेसिक बेसिक चीज़ें कवर कर रहे हैं। ओके, अब यहाँ पे है वाई वर द फ्रेंच गवर्नमेंट्स अनस्टेबल फ्रॉम 90 से 95। The simplest reason, French was trying to replace an absolute monarchy with a new system, but once one agreed what the new system should be and everything changed fast. The main cause is no agreement about who should be. Some wanted a constitutional monarchy, some wanted a republic, some wanted more radical democracy, and some wanted an old system back. Acha, Paris versus the rest of France. Paris became a center of power. Many regions resented Paris controlling everything, rebellion and resistance. Huge economic pressure. High food prices plus unemployment plus shortages. When people are hungry, politics became unstable fast. War made everything worse. ठीक है, फ्रॉम 92 अ वॉर अगेंस्ट ऑस्ट्रिया एंड पावर्स क्रिएटेड पैनिक, फियर ऑफ इन्वेजन, फियर ऑफ ट्रेटर्स इनसाइड फ्रांस, मोर एक्सट्रीम पॉलिसीज एंड वायलेंस। फिर आता है रेडिकल चेंजेस हैपन टू क्विकली, monarchy removed, nobility privileged attacked, church power reduced, even a new calendar आ जाता है। factions fighting each other, different revolutionary group didn't just argue, they removed each other from power, that's why the government kept collapsing and being replaced। फिर आता है जी आपके पास द फ्रेंच revolution calendar. This is an example of how radical the revolution became. What it means, they created a new calendar to break away from an old monarchy plus church traditions. It began on 22nd September 1789 and they called the year one. New France began. The month got new names like Bromere, Thermidor, Brera. Napoleon later abolished in 1805 and returned to the normal calendar. सही है, आगे कार्टून्स आ जाते हैं, इतना कोई इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है। सही है, ओके। आगे आगे आता है थ्री मेन ग्रुप्स, जैकोबन्स, ठीक है, आपके पास फ्यूलियंट्स और आपके पास ग्रेंडन्स। जो आपके पास इस वक्त जैकोबन्स हैं, ठीक है, दे स्टार्टेड एट 89, ओपन टू सिटीजन्स, वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग इन पेरिस, लिंक्ड विद पेरिस वर्किंग क्लास। सही है, एंड द मोनार्की कम्प्लीटली एग्जीक्यूट द किंग एंड अरेस्टोक्रेटिक प्रिविलेजेस, रिड्यूस द पावर ऑफ कैथलिक चर्च, पुश इक्वालिटी मोर स्ट्रांगली, लीडिंग द रेन ऑफ टेरर। सही है, 93 से 94 वाला। जैकोबेंस इज इक्वल टू रेडिकल प्लस पेरिस बेस्ड प्लस टेरर। सही है, आगे आ जाता है आपके पास फ्यूलियंट्स। These are conservative, pro-king but limited. Reformed, formed in 1791, called the Friends of the Constitution, sat on the right side of the assembly. What they wanted, keep the king but with limits, constitutional monarchy. Opposed going to war with Austria. सही है, strongly opposed Jacobins. सही, तो वो लोग नहीं चाहते थे कि हम जंग पे जाएं। सही है, बट एट द सेम टाइम दे डिमांडेड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मोनार्की। ओके, आगे है मैनी वर एग्जीक्यूटेड ड्यूरिंग द टेरर। सही है, गिरंडन्स फॉर्म्ड इन 91, ठीक है, जस्ट लाइक फिलुएंट्स। सम केम फ्रॉम द गिरोंडे रीजन, दे वांटेड अ रिपब्लिक। रिपब्लिक क्या होता है, जिसके अंदर आपका किंग नहीं होता, बट नॉट एज एक्सट्रीम एज जैकबन्स। सपोर्टेड वॉर विद Austria, less focused on full economic equality, worried the Paris mob had too much power, wanted more attention to the wishes of all France, not just Paris. Some opposed executing the king. Okay, many also executed in the terror. Moderate republic, pro wars, and suspicion of Paris crowd. ठीक है, आगे these group fought each other and when one gained power, it often removed the other. That's why the government changed so much between 90 and 95. सही, तो हम एक पैराग्राफ इसका लिखेंगे। मुझे कुछ चीज़ जानी थी एक मिनट, आपके पास क्या था? द ग्रेट फियर समर, सही है। ओके, आगे जाता है काउंटर रेवोल्यूशनरीज रॉयलिस्ट्स। ठीक है, द पीपल हु वांटेड टू स्टॉप रेवोल्यूशन एंड ब्रिंग बैक द बोरबॉन मोनार्की, what they failed, they were unrealistic. Louis XVI didn't understand how angry the people were about the old system. He couldn't accept that his power must be limited and he must rule with people's consent. After Louis XVI, his son Louis XVII was sick and died in 95. The next climate, Louis XVIII, issued Declaration of Verona saying he wanted the ancient regime back. सही है, that was unrealistic because most French people hated the old privileges. Simple meaning, they wanted old France back and when France had already changed. आगे क्या है? The royalists were divided. Among the immigrants, ठीक है, royalists who fled, about 40,000 fled France, but they argued. Some wanted full monarchy, full plus full privileges back. Others accepted a constitutional monarchy. Some wanted to kill all revolutionaries, others wanted peace. Some even refused to work with others because they aren't noble enough. They wanted to assume people would rise up for to support if they returned. They had no unity. आगे क्या, opposition inside France was also divided. Some cared more about restoring the church than the king. Some regions like Brittany resisted but couldn't march to Paris to overthrow the revolution. ठीक है, many people feared change but still didn't actively support a royal comeback. Even anti-revolution people weren't active working together. फिर क्या है? वीक लीडरशिप, नो स्ट्रॉन्ग charismatic leader that everyone trusted. Louis 16 looked incompetent, executed in 93. Louis 17 in 95 died हो गया. Louis 18 डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ वेरोना की और लोग उसके अगेंस्ट चले गए. फिर है फॉरेन पावर्स couldn't defeat revolutionary France. Austria, Prussia, Britain fought the France but failed because France still had a strong army. Soldiers were promoted by ability, not birth, made it more effective. Battle of Valmy हुई 92 में. France topped Prussia प्लस ऑस्ट्रिया, ह्यूज मोरल बूस्ट. ठीक है, तो अब आपको पता है प्रूशिया क्या था. सही. फिर क्या, ऑल्सो ब्रिटेन हैड, आगे क्या है? ऑस्ट्रिया भी आपको पता है क्या है, ठीक है, क्योंकि हम पूरा जर्मन का पढ़ाए हैं. सही. आगे आता है ऑल्सो ब्रिटेन हैड नो बिग लैंड आर्मी एंड हैड इट्स ओन इंटरेस्ट्स, कॉलोनीज वीकनिंग फ्रांस. आगे है क्यूबॉन एक्सपीडिशन जिसके अंदर 1795 का आ गया. ब्रिटिश प्लस इमिग्रेस प्लस लोकल रेबल्स फेल्ड बैडली, मैनी रॉयलिस्ट्स वर शॉट. सही है. ब्रिटिश प्लस इमाग्रास एंड प्लस लोकल रेबल्स फेल्ड टू बैडली, मैनी रॉयलिस्ट वर शॉट. ठीक है, आगे क्या है? Many French people supported the revolution's gain. A big reason royalists didn't understand people liked things like ending privilege, more equality, changes in law. Napoleon later protected these gains too, so people wouldn't accept a return to old privileges. आगे क्या है? Terror plus harsh punishment stopped people joining royalists. During the terror, many counter-revolutionaries were executed. Property were seized, so many people were too scared to support royalists openly. सही है. तो ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है क्योंकि ड्यूरिंग द रेन ऑफ टेरर क्या हो रहा था कि जितने काउंटर रेवोल्यूशनरीज थे, मगरेज और ये सारे थे, इनको मार दिया जाता था. ठीक है, तो पीपल को डर लगता था कि अगर आप इन रॉयलिस्ट को सपोर्ट करेंगे क्योंकि अब पता है उनको मार देंगे. रॉयलिस्ट फेल्ड बिकॉज दे वर अनरियलिस्टिक, divided, had weak leaders, lacked successful foreign support, and because many French people supported revolutionary changes and feared the terror. By 1790, the National Assembly tried to fix France's biggest unfairness, tax, local government, justice, church, but new arguments plus hunger plus distrust of the king caused instability to continue. क्या था? Taxation plus money. France was nearly bankrupt, but the old tax system was unfair. Rich often avoided tax, poor paid more. Sold church land values to raise money, printed paper money called assignats, made taxes fair, income tax, rich pay more, removed hated consumption taxes like gabelle, ठीक है, introduced land tax, property owners pay, no more tax exemption for the rich. Local government reform. Old local government was outdated and messy. ठीक है, abolished old systems, created 83 department to standardize France, set up elected officials from city towns to villages. फिर क्या है? People were not used to elections, so mistakes and conflict could happen. And फिर क्या है? Justice reform. What problem? Justice system favored lords and aristocrats and wasn't equal. Justice must be open, sometimes free and accountable. Important local justice of the peace would be elected. ठीक है. The court became more fairer and popular. The church reforms. Church had huge wealth and power. State took church land. Monasteries abolished. ठीक है. Bishops reduced. Clergy brought under state control via civil constitution of the clergy. Clergy were asked to take an oath supporting these changes. Why it caused problem? Many people thought forcing priests to swear an oath was too extreme, causing a huge split between priests who accepted constitutional clergy and priests who refused non-juring refractory clergy. Why instability still grew? Even though many grievances were fixed, big problems remained. The king problem. Why should the king's role be now? Louis XVI was reluctant and people didn't trust him. He might try to bring back the ancient regime. Bad harvest in summer 90, risk of hunger in winter 1971. Hunger is equals to anger, and anger is equals to riots, and riots is equals to instability. Many elite wanted to keep privileges and oppose changes. Who should vote? All men, only property owners. Some even suggested women's vote. Censorship ended. Press became freer and more extreme, pushing society towards radicalism. सही है. ओके. Assembly. अच्छा यहाँ पे क्या है? Assembly was successful to a moderate extent by the end of 90. It achieved major reforms in taxation, justice, administration, but it failed to secure long-term stability because king's issue, religion, and economic hardship were still threatened. Political instability, economic hardships, religious division, king's question. ठीक है. आगे क्या था? Reduced all privilege, justice reform, fairer economic government administration, फाइनेंस प्लस टैक्स रिफॉर्म. सही हो गया. फिर आ जाता है आपके पास आगे. एक मिनट. फंडामेंटल प्रॉब्लम्स फ्रांस स्टिल फेस एट द एंड. फूड, रोल, रिलीजियस, पॉलिटिक्स इन एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ द इलेक्शन. ठीक है, इसका करो आगे. People hoped 1791 would finally bring stability because a new constitution was coming, but it didn't because people still disagreed about the revolution. Harvests were still bad, the king acted suspiciously, counter revolution grew, radical became stronger, so the politics became more extreme. फिर आ जाता है आपके पास द फ्लाइट टू वर्नेस 1791 जून में. What Louis XVI did in June 1791, the king and his family tried to escape France. He wanted to reach the Austrian Netherlands, basically a safer area near Austria, Marie Antoinette's family. He was आगे क्या है? He was recognized at the town of Vernes. ठीक है. Revolution supported क्या है? Revolution supporters captured him and revolution supporters captured him and brought revolution supported ये और सती है. Revolution supporter captured him and brought him back to Paris, and after that he was basically a prisoner. तो ये बात याद रखने की, जब अवेयरनेस के लिए गए थे तो उस वक्त इनके पास फेक पासपोर्ट था, तो प्रॉबली भाग ही रहे थे. People stopped trusting the king. He is against the revolution. He want to bring back the ancient regime. He is trying to get foreign armies to invade France and crush the revolution. So it like later. Many nobles ran away abroad and formed opposition groups from outside France. Revolutionaries saw them as a real threat because they could ask foreign countries to attack. Here politics became more radical. Before Venice, some moderates still wanted a constitutional monarchy. After Venice, people started him saying remove him, depose him, maybe even execute him. सही है. Okay. A quote at the end of basically mean, do we stop now and settle, or do we start the revolution more aggressively? A note contributed assembly discussions who was later executed. Are we going to finish the revolution or are we going to begin it fresh? अच्छा, ये इवेंट आगे आ जाता है चैम्स दे मार्स इवेंट जुलाई 91 का. ठीक है, तो जून में आपके पास वेरेनेस आता है. आफ्टर द फ्लाइट टू वेरेनेस, पीपल इन फ्रांस वर ऑलरेडी. एक रुकिएगा. सही है. ओके. आगे है चैम द मार्स जुलाई 1791. After the flight to Venice, people in France were already angry and scared. A crowd gathered at Champ de Mars, a big open park in central Paris. They were signing a petition asking the assembly to take strong action against the king because he tried to escape. A national guard named force in Paris fired at the crowd. More than 50 people were killed. The authorities are protecting the king. The king feels like a counter-revolutionary move. It made more radicals feel unsafe. More ordinary people began to think we need a more extreme solution to the king problem. आगे क्या, September 1791 Constitution is created. The National Assembly believed its main job was to write Constitution, and it did. France stayed the monarchy, but it became a constitutional monarchy. King stays, but power is limited by constitution. The king still had a veto. He could block new laws. Real law power moved to a new elected body. Legislative assembly replaced the national assembly. ठीक है, तो अब आपके पास पहले क्या था, थर्ड स्टेट थी, फिर आपके पास नेशनल असेंबली आई, अब नेशनल असेंबली किसने रिप्लेस किया, लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली ने। फिर इलेक्शंस हुए, द लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली वॉज इनडायरेक्टली इलेक्टेड। ठीक है, पीपल चोज electors, electors chose deputies. About two-thirds of the adult men could take part in elections, so more participation than before, but not full democracy. फिर है सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर, लेजिस्लेचर मेकिंग लॉज, एग्जीक्यूटिव रन्स गवर्नमेंट, जुडिशरी जजेस। सही है, आगे क्या है, वाई डिड इट फेल सो फास्ट इवन दो इट लुक लाइक अ सोल्यूशन, प्रॉब्लम रिमेन, पुअर हार्वेस्ट, एंगर एंड अनरेस्ट, रिलीजियस डिवीजन, मैनी हेटेड द प्रीस्ट ओथ, king mistrust after when people believed he was loyal, he was disloyal, counter revolution threat inside France and abroad, radicals wanted republic, many believed the revolution wasn't finished until there was no king. So a new system had very little trust from the start. The constitution tried to stabilize France, but hunger plus church conflict, distrust of the king plus radicals and the royalists pulled the country apart. सही है। Source P is relying for the judge's Lewis is likely intention because it was proved immediately after the event and aligns with the contextual evidence that Lewis opposed key revolutionary changes. सही है, तो पढ़ लेते हैं भाई। ओके, ये क्या था, अकाउंट टू द फ्लाइट टू वेरिनस, सही है, जून में हुई थी ना। फ्यू पीपल हैड अ क्लियर आइडिया देन द किंग हिमसेल्फ on the situation in which France found herself. He was convinced that the ills of the kingdom were so glaring that they would correct themselves. He knew France was likely to have a civil war. He knew a foreign war would be useless. He felt the immigrants would become the object of hatred. He believed that only he could erect a barrier against all the misfortune which must result from all these problems. He was convinced of this. He would help the moderates in the National Assembly against the popular revolutionary current. He would accept the changes he had already agreed to, and he would deal with the foreign powers. He would accept reasonable proposals coming from members. He wanted his crossings of the frontier to prevent a civil war, to become prey on treachery and stupidity. He was resolved that once the legitimate rights of royal authority had been restored and the constitution freely discussed should be have been approved to him to proceed to campaign to stay here for a long time and thus gain respect for the fundamental laws of the state far from the disturbances of Paris and remain there until the constitution was fully operational. तो ये फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ पीपल जा रहा था, एक साइड ये है। अच्छा, दूसरी क्या है, the premier public servant abandons his post. He arms himself with a false passport after having said in writing to the foreign powers that his most dangerous enemies are those who spread alleged doubts about the monarch's intentions. He breaks his word. He leaves the French declaration, which, if not criminal, is against the principles of our liberty. He must have been aware that his flight opposed the nation to the danger of civil war. He suggests that he only wished to go to Malmedy, but I say he do not intend to make peaceful observations. But he wished to support his own claim with army, and it was conspiracy against liberty. यानी वापस आएगा। ठीक है, अब ये क्या हो रहा है जी आपके पास 20 जून को, तो पीपल गेटिंग इनटू द ट्यूलरीज ड्यूरिंग द फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन 92 के अंदर, सही है। ओके, इट शोड द पेरिस पीपल फोर्सिंग देयर वे टू ट्यूलरीज पैलेस इन पेरिस, स्टॉप ब्लॉकिंग रेवोल्यूशन, सम से थिंग लाइक लॉन्ग लिव लिबर्टी एंड अगेंस्ट वेटो, सही हो गया। आगे क्या, फोर प्रॉब्लम्स हैपन एट वर्स, फियर ऑफ फॉरेन अटैक, ऑस्ट्रिया प्लस ओशिया माइट इन्वेड टू रिस्टोर लुइस 16, क्वींस ब्रदर एम्पर ऑफ ऑस्ट्रिया, डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ पिलनर्स हुई 91 में, ऑस्ट्रिया प्लस प्रूशिया पब्लिकली सपोर्ट लुइस एंड अपोज अ रेवोल्यूशन, इमाग्रेस, many noble escaped and asked foreign rulers to help bring back the old order, food crisis, poor harvest, bread shortage, prices rise, anger, church split, many priests refused the oath, people argued and got angry. Why France declared war April 1792? Radical politicians in the assembly pushed for war because they thought it would force the king to choose a side, support a revolution, or be exposed as a traitor, spread revolution liberation ideas across Europe. They even hoped it would help the economy. सही है, so France declared war on Austria in April 1792. What happened next? France struggled badly at first. France was unprepared and many experienced officers had left. Early military disaster had happened. This made Parisians more panicked. Suspicion of treason grew. People believed aristocrats were deserting to the enemy. Marie Antoinette was helping Austria. Louis wanted the enemy to win. Louis also wouldn't support the assembly on the clergy oath issue, so the war forced people to pick sides. Pick middle class plus working class united against king. ठीक है, फिर है सितंबर 1792, अगस्त सितंबर क्राइसिस एक्सप्लोड, सेकेंड रेवोल्यूशन. People in France were terrified because enemy armies were advancing. They were hungry, so they attacked the king's power directly. The key event: the crowd stormed the Tuileries Palace. Many royal defenders were killed. Swiss Guard king's personal soldiers were massacred. King and the family arrested and imprisoned. Constitutional monarchy effectively ended. ठीक है. The revolution became more violent, and this leading to the start of terror atmosphere. The new government, national convention. The assembly is dissolved, national convention takes over. Voting, universal male suffrage, all men could vote except servant unemployed. Turnout low, less than 25% voted. Convention members mostly middle class, more experienced than 89, and strongly influenced by King's betrayal plus link to क्या था. Convention member mostly middle class, more experienced than 89 people, and strongly influenced by King's betrayal plus links to Austria. This crisis began to head in August 1792, and an event which became known as the Journeys or the September Massacres. There was an outbreak of violence in Paris which was seen by many as second revolution. ठीक हो गया. जब ट्यूलिस पैलेस पे इन्होंने हमला बोला, तो इस तरह समझें कि आपके पास थी थर्ड स्टेट, नेशनल असम्बली, लेजिस्लेटिव असम्बली, अब है नेशनल कन्वेंशन. तो डेट्स एक बार रिवाइज है. 5 मई स्टेट जनरल की मीटिंग होती है. इसके बाद आपके कैशियर्स दी डोलियंसेस है. फिर 17 जून को नेशनल असम्बली फॉर्म्ड होती है. 20 जून को टेनिस कोर्ट होता है. 14 जुलाई को बेस्टाइल फॉर्म्ड होता है. ठीक है. जुलाई से अगस्त के बीच आपके पास ग्रेट फियर होता है. सही. फिर अगस्त के अंदर डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ द राइट्स ऑफ मैन होता है. इससे पहले आपके पास अगस्त डिक्रीज था. से फिर आपके पास 90 आ जाता है, मेजर रिफॉर्म, सिविल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ द क्लर्जी हो जाता है. 91 आ जाता है, फ्लाइट टू वेरनेस. जुलाई में चैम दे मार्स. सितंबर में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ दिस. ठीक है. फिर 92 आ जाता है, अप्रैल 1792 वॉर डिक्लेयर्ड ऑन ऑस्ट्रिया. सही है. 20 आपके पास आ जाता है 20 जून को क्राउड इन्वेड्स ट्यूलरीज. ठीक है. अगस्त के अंदर आपके पास सेकेंड रेवोल्यूशन आ जाता है. ठीक है. और सितंबर में सितंबर मैसेकर्स आ जाते हैं. 20 बैटल ऑफ वाल्मी आ जाती है. ठीक है. 22 रिपब्लिक प्रोक्लेम, नेशनल कन्वेंशन टेक्स प्लेस. ठीक है. 93 से 95 लुइस 16 एग्जीक्यूटेड. फिर रेन ऑफ टेरर है. फिर जुलाई 7 थर्मीडोर है, रॉबर्ट्सवाइल ओवरथ्रोन, टेरर एंड 95 में डायरेक्टली इस्टेब्लिश. ठीक है. तो वहाँ तक कर लेते हैं. War and the pressure cooker effect. France is fighting a major European war and invasion feels possible. Who create two crises at home? The state is broke, inflation, shortages, resentment, mass conscription, Livy and Massaire 93. सही है. Anger, resistance, revolt. Why it destabilizes politics? War encourages emergency thinking. People accept harsher measurement because they feel meal essential. No tradition of republican government. France had centuries of monarchy. Suddenly it's a republic run by revolutionaries with little governing experience. ठीक है. Again, France had centuries of monarchy and suddenly it's republic run by revolutionaries with little governing experience. Many ordinary people question the government's legitimacy. Who gave you the right to rule? Why it matters? When legitimacy is weak, the state relies more on force and fear to enforce obedience. There are regional and city resistance. Paris versus the rest of France. Vendée and Brittany oppose king's execution, defend church, hate orders from Paris. Federalist revolts in cities like Lyon and Marseille. Resentment of Paris dominance plus hatred of Paris crowd. Why it destabilizes? It's basically a civil war inside a foreign war, so the regime feels surrounded. There are political splits inside the convention. Deep division between those demanding more radical reforms, often linked to Jacobins plus Sans Gilliot's pressure. ठीक है. And those who fear extremism, often Grindel leaning or moderate Republicans. Why destabilize? The revolution start eating its own, but just become political too. ठीक है. दोबारा आपके पास था पॉलिटिकल स्प्लिट इनसाइड द नेशनल कन्वेंशन, डीप डिवीजन बिटवीन दोज डिमांडिंग मोर रेडिकल रिफॉर्म्स. सही है. एंड दोज हु फियर एक्सट्रीमिज्म. सही है. वाइड डिस्टेबलाइज रेवोल्यूशन ईटिंग इट्स ओन. फिर है हंगर प्लस फूड राइट्स. Hunger plus bread shortages, frequent riots, crowd pressure lead to act punish, hoarders control prices. Why destabilize? Many people are starving. Political became immediate and violent, and compromise looks like betrayal. फिर a radical press and uncensored political culture. Newspapers spread rumors, conspiracies, and extreme demands. Why it destabilizes? Paranoia become normal. Opponents are painted as traitors, not rivals. Here as a sense Gilliot's as a power block. Paris crowd has proven it can reshape politics. The journey is the warning shot. They push the convention towards stronger action and harsher punishments. Why it destabilizes? Power shifts from legal institutions towards street pressure, fear driven decisions. सही है. Again, Paris crowd has proven it can reshape politics. The journey is the warning shot. They push the convention towards stronger action and harsher punishments. Wide destabilized power shift from legal institution towards street pressure, fear driven decisions. The really strong link sentence you can use is instability wasn't just a background condition, it produced the logic of terror. When war, civil revolt, hunger, and political deviance collided, leaders treated dissent as an existential threat and used repression as a form of emergency government. So, war plus civil war plus hunger plus legitimacy crisis plus radicalization, fear of betrayal, and harsh laws, purges, and execution. सही है. तो हम ये पढ़ते हैं क्या सीन है इसका. तो जनवरी 92 में क्या. One of the most stupid ideas that came into the head of politician is to believe that it makes sense for a nation to send armies against a foreign people. अच्छा, रोबिस्पायर ने कहा था. One of the most stupid ideas that come into the head of politician is to believe it make a sense for the nation to send armies against a foreign people to make them adopt its laws and constitution. No one loves armed missionaries, and the first reaction that natural instinct and the common sense give it to see them as enemies and get rid of them. Movements which would be supported are those who are directed against real tyrants like the American revolt against the English or the events like the 14th July. A foreign war provoked and directed by the government in the sort of circumstance that we are in is a nonsensical movement which will lead to the collapse of our state. Such a war will distract public opinion, create a diversion from the real fears of our nation, and give the enemies of our liberty an advantage. War will mean our constitution will be subverted and is a part of conspiracy to destroy liberty in France. अच्छा, ब्रिसेट्स की स्पीच थी. व्हाट डिवाइड्स रॉबेस्पियर एंड मी, व्हाट पोजीशन शुड वी टेक ऑन द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ वॉर. If we are in danger, then while I think it is not necessary to attack, but we must defend ourselves. It is much better to fight in enemy's country than in our own. We must carry the war beyond the Rhine, and the immigrants who were succeeded in collecting soldiers in worms and goblins, and both aiming and providing them with supplies. The German princes have helped them, therefore, it is necessary that France uses its army to crush its impudent neighbors and prevent attacks. We know that the king and his courts wants war and have secret intentions against us. We know that we are correct in suspecting the king's government, but we must use the great military force to compel Austrian emperor to recognize our new rights and deprive the immigrants of any support. सही हो गया. और ज़रूरत नहीं है वो. सो क्या था. War intensifies fear and suspicion, defeats and the threat of invasion made people obsessive over traitors inside France. Radicalization accelerated. The crisis atmosphere helped justify harsh action against enemies of the revolution. Emergency government, the Committee of Public Safety, the revolutionary tribunals, the repression expanded as the state tried to survive. Became explicitly the instability of Robespierre, predated civil war, federalist revolt, economic hardship, and the terror. Uh, the Brexit correctly saw that France did face real foreign enemies and immigration threats. France eventually pushed the war outward and later achieved victories. Robespierre had a more perceptive argument because he best predicted the war would deepen paranoia, increase internal conflict, and undermine constitution. Government development clearly seen the breakdown of terror. Though the Brexit was right that external threats were real and become more unavoidable. ये क्या है जी. डॉक्यूमेंट्री ऑफ द फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन, पता नहीं, दिसंबर 92 में. Louis, the French people accuse you of having committed many crimes in order to establish the tyranny by destroying liberty in France. You attacked the sovereignty of people by suspecting the assemblies of its representative and by driving them by violence by their sessions. You caused in. अच्छा एक मिनट रुकिएगा. पढ़ा भी नहीं जा रहा था. ओके. Acha, Louis, the French people accuse you of having committed many crimes in order to establish the tyranny by destroying liberty in France. You attacked the sovereignty of people by sending the assemblies of its representative and by driving them by violence. You caused an army to march against the citizens of Paris and caused their blood to flow. You withdrew this army only when the capture of Bastille and the general uprising showed you that the people were victorious. For a long time, you contemplated flight and made your escape as a Baroness with a false passport. You apparently accepted a new constitution. Your speeches announced a desire to maintain it, but you were to overthrow it before it was achieved. Your brothers, enemy of the state, have relied the immigrants. They have raised regiments, borrowed money, and formed alliances against us in your name. You allowed the French nation to be disgraced in Germany, Italy, and Spain. You caused the blood of Frenchmen to flow. अच्छा एक चीज़ थी ओके सही है तो क्लियर हो गया काफ़ी हद तक हम्म, ज़रूरत नहीं है जाके आगे न्यू गवर्नमेंट ऑफ द किंग इज killed after Suez is executed. France writes another new constitution. France now has a single chamber, one main law body, making a real power shift to the Committee of Public Safety. The CPS is a small group which uses executive power like in a crisis cabinet that control the army, the courts. Basically, the government became more centralized and more emergency rule. Civil war, Wendy in Brittany, food prices rising, people hungry and angry, fear of invasion by Britain and other powers, pressure from the Paris mob. The law of suspects is legalized here. The law of suspect give the CPS sweeping power to arrest people. You don't need hard proof. Being suspected is enough. It target opponents of revolution, suspected opponents, people accused of hoarding food. The law is basically the legal foundation of the terror. What the terror look like in numbers? The passive give the big figure to show scale. 5 lakh arrested, 16,000 executed, 10,000 died in prison from bad treatment, 15,000 died without trial. ठीक है तो 5 लाख अरेस्ट कर लिए थे 15,000 को विदाउट ट्रायल मारा था 16,000 को ऑफिशियली किल किया था 10,000 जेल में खुद मार के द क्वीन नोबल प्रीस्ट एंड रॉयलिस्ट्स By autumn 93, the crisis improved. The Paris shift tones, the worst danger is fading. Austria defeated, food prices began to drop, economy began to stabilize, privileged calmed, heavy taxes on the rich become rich bring money. सही है आगे है the irony. Even leaders want stability but terror continues. Denton, lawyer, Paris connection, Jacobin, supported overthrow of the monarchy but described as moderate, opposed the extreme terror, get executed for being against the extremes. The terror turns against its own revolutionaries. Introduce even more significant. The terror wasn't random cruelty, it grew out of war, internal rebellion, hunger, fear of betrayal, pressure from past crowds, crisis, emergency government repression. So once the France got safer, the new system, law of suspects plus CPS power, kept going and it started eliminating moderates like Danton. So the tool used to revolution who made it violent and self-destructive. फिर आगे Robespierre was a lawyer, so he was educated, trained in argument. He was elected to States General as a representative of third state. He was anti-monarchy and strongly critical of the king. He was one of the first major revolutionaries to argue the king should be put on trial and France should become the republic. Later, he became tightly associated with the reign of terror. Thousands were executed because they were seen as enemies of revolution. In that, Robespierre himself is overthrown, arrested, and executed in July 94. He started as someone who wants major political change and add as a symbol of revolution becoming violent and extreme, and then the revolution turned on to him. Radicalization, the revolution become ठीक है आगे क्या है सही है radicalization, the government moves from reform, republic, and terror. Instability, even the most powerful revolutionary leader could be executed. His death in 94 is basically the end of terror and start of a more moderate phase, Thermidorian reaction. ठीक है revolution tribunal shall have a president and 4 or 5 presidents. The revolutionary tribunal is instituted to punish the enemies of the people. The enemies of the people are those who seek to destroy public liberty either by force or by cunning, those who try to re-establish the monarchy, those who try to oppose the National Assembly in any way, those who have prevented the army's success or helped the enemies of the republic, those who impeded the improving of Paris and profiteers, those who have spread fake news, those who spread the aristocracy. The penalty provided here is death. ठीक है तो लॉ ऑफ सस्पेक्ट्स वेरी हैवी है Revolutionary tribunal is a key. It says the revolutionary tribunal exists to punish enemies of the people. So the court job isn't neutral justice, is political protection of the regular. सही है तो आ गया. Again, what Robert Fives believed. Saw himself as morally pure and guided by strict principles. He wanted to replace Roman Catholicism and a new civil republic of virtue. ठीक है. This virtue idea focused on duty, citizens helping each other, and loyalty to democracy. How this was different from early revolutionaries. Early revolutionary leaders had reduced the church's political power but did not directly attack Christianity itself. Robespierre went further by trying to replace Christianity worship with a new system, the cult of the supreme being. Robespierre introduced the cult of the supreme being to replace worship of the Christian God. He didn't just support it, he personally led a ceremonial procession to launch it. This showed how central he made himself of new moral order. He saved the revolution at a critical moment when it could have collapsed or been defeated. Critics say his rule became dictatorial. He involved many executions, especially during the terror. Fairhead, he was called the incorruptible because he seemed honest and morally strict. He truly believed the power should belong to the people. But in practice, he acted as a ruthless politician. He would not tolerate rivals. He even sent fellow Jacobins to the guillotine. सही है. ओके, एक और चीज़ थी. एक मिनट तक एक ऊपर कौन सा है? रिपब्लिक ऑफ विर्चू एंड तक उसको आइडिया तक चेंज कर दिया. कहते हैं रिपब्लिक ऑफ विर्चू एंड कल्ट ऑफ द सुप्रीमिंग. ओके, ठीक है. We want a state of affairs where all unworthy and cruel passions are unknown and all kind and generous passions are aroused by the laws. Ambitions become the desire to deserve glory and to serve the fatherland. The citizens submit to the magistrate to the people, and people to justice. The fatherland guarantees the well-being of each individual, and where each individual enjoys with the pride and the prosperity and glory of the fatherland. Commerce is a source of public wealth, not only of monasteries for few people. In our country, we want a substitute morality for selfishness, honesty for honor, the rule of reason for the tyranny of tradition, the contempt for vice for the contemptness of fortune, love of glory instead of love of money, good people instead of advantages of birth, the generous, happy people instead of despicable people. That is to say, all virtues and all miracles of the public and all voices and all absurdities of the monarchy. What kind of government can realize these marvel? Only a democratic or republic government. ठीक है. What happened during the later terror? The reign of terror continued for about 2 years. The Robespierre wanted to remove enemies of his version of the revolution. He targeted even famous revolutionaries like Danton, who was arrested and executed. The local committees of public safety kept using guillotine to enforce revolutionary control. Why Robespierre was overthrown? Many deputies and revolutionary figures believed that Robespierre was aiming to become a dictator. France was becoming a police state ruled by fear, surveillance, arrest. He might undo the revolution's aim by concentrating power in himself. They arrested Robespierre. He tried to kill himself. He was executed along with 80 supporters. Thermidorian reaction. ठीक है. Robespierre's death raised the terror and many prisoners were released, but instability and deep political deviance remained between moderates, Grindons, and radical Jacobins, often described right versus left. ठीक है. एक मिनट. Moderates, सही है. Other pressures making instability worse. Even after the foreign threat reduced, the harvest of 94 was poor, winter was harsh, prices rose harshly, people suffered again. फिर white terror आ जाता है. People who had suffered under the Jacobin took revenge in the white terror. The Jacobin club was closed. Those linked with the earlier terror was hunted down, arrested, and like killed. White referred to white cockades worn by monarchists. ठीक है. अब यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? द रोल कॉल ऑफ द लास्ट विक्टर्स ऑफ द टेरर. By 95, Paris had very little food, so people got angry, attacked the convention. Many demanded more democracy, radical action like forcing searches for hidden food, punishing the people who helped remove Robespierre. The convention was tired of the violence and pressured the poor working class, so they sent in troops, arrested, executed the leaders of the Sans Gillots. The child, Louis 17, died, so his uncle declared himself Louis 18. But he was in exile, so bringing back an old monarchy would likely. Even after Robespierre died and terror raised, France was still unstable because of hunger, political fighting, and revenge, and people realizing 1793 constitution didn't work. The roll call of the last victims of the terror showed people in prison near the end of the terror, highlighted human suffering and panic. ठीक है. The roll call of the last victims of the terror. Victims of the terror. एक मिनट सब्र रखिएगा. Okay. What was the terror? The period when the revolutionary government used fear, arrest, executions to destroy enemy of the revolution. Most historians date it to 93 and 94. Who caused it? The war and invasion threats from foreign civil war and rebellions, food shortages plus high prices, political paranoia. Who led it? Maximilian Robespierre and Saint Justin Couthon. People accused as counter-revolutionaries, noble priests, royalists, ordinary civilians too accused on weak evidence, even revolutionary themselves. Why different perspectives are there? It saved revolution when France was surrounded by enemies. It became dictatorship by fear, by unfair trial and mass killing. So some it sees a necessary wartime emergency, the murder and tyranny. Many leaders feared Robespierre would kill them next. Robespierre lost support July 1794. He was executed and the government reduced the terror afterwards. Maybe partially to deal with the war, but many actions went too far, especially executions of rivals and ordinary people. What were its implications? The state became more centralized and powerful. People accepted extreme measures for security. It damaged trust and created deep political hatred. Robespierre's fall, business release, Jacobin weakened, white terror, revenge violence against Jacobins, ongoing instability that helped lead the Napoleon's rise later. Decided who controlled the revolution, showed how a revolution can turn into violence, dictatorship, change France political and society. ठीक है. It gets a lot of attention because it's dramatic, but sometimes that hides other important issues: war, hunger, economic, political chaos. Uh, mm, mm, okay. Abolition of feudal rights reduced aristocrats' income. Many raised rents. Luxury industries collapsed because aristocrats lost wealth. Church land was nationalized. Aristocrats lost land. Was vested interest. They supported every corporate they gain. Mm, the government uses Sagnasts. They cause inflation. Britain blockaded French ports. Overseas trade was devastated. Big ports like Bordeaux and Marseille suffered mass unemployment. The army demanded food and horses, plus conscription took men away, farming and harvest corn. सही है. Hmm, hmm, सही है. अब आगे हम स्टार्ट करते हैं कुछ ब्रेक के बाद. सही है. तो अभी तक काफ़ी आसान डिस्कशन चल रही है हमारी, क्योंकि रिवीजन हो रही है तो अभी तक आता होगा ऑब्वियसली.